And there we have it. Mercedes has leaked some information regarding the 2023 version of their car. With the team desperately seeking better performance in the next season, one couldn't help but wonder, what are they going to do so differently? Obviously, something needed to change on their car, just like Wolff said, but is it that easy? And will they see an improvement after just 1 year of bad performance? Now, the initial design promises great things, so Mercedes appears to have been dealt good cards. The 2022 season has been one of the worst that the team has experienced, mostly because they suffered from the aerodynamic phenomenon of porpoising. This eventually meant that the car wasn't able to achieve high speeds without bouncing like mad on the track, and on top of that, there was a significant engine disadvantage compared to Ferrari and Red Bull. All in all, it resulted in Mercedes finishing third, with many thinking that it was a tactical decision so that they'd have more time in the wind tunnel compared to their rivals, Red Bull and Ferrari. Nonetheless, we'll get to that later in this video, as we want to reveal the information that the media was able to obtain for the W14, or the car that is supposed to bring back the glory to Brackley. Now remember, 2022 was the first winless season in Hamilton's career, and the team managed to pick up 1 win only from Russell in Brazil. But the fact that the second half of the season was much stronger compared to the first one gives hope that Mercedes has finally understood what needs to be done, and now they're going to push for greatness. The technical regulations are going to be changed a bit, mostly because Mercedes has pushed for it. The Silver Arrows kept lobbying the FIA that the porpoising is way too dangerous and a lift on the car rides needs to happen. But the fact that Red Bull was the only team that managed to solve this problem prior to the season beginning wasn't going in Mercedes' favour. Still, the FIA has complied with Mercedes and made the floor increase by 15mm, as well as the diffuser throat. That's why Mercedes hopes that with these light changes, the field is going to be leveled even more, and the design of their new car is going to propel them to yet another championship. Now, it's worth mentioning that the new version of the car will contain a lot of similarities compared to the 2022 one, with the differences revolving around certain aspects. Now that Mercedes has continued with the zero sidepod design development in 2022, it would make literally no sense to ditch that design and go with another one. It seems like they managed to get it working, at least that's what we saw from Hungary onwards. It was the right thing to do in order to understand the porpoising phenomenon and make it work from 2023 onward. So what is going to be different on the W14 compared to the W13, which everyone at Mercedes labelled as the worst car to ever exit the production lines? Well, for starters, Wolff said that the new version of the car will retain much of the DNA from the previous car, and the main changes that we're going to see are going to be under the bodywork, in terms of packaging and under the floor. The floor is something that is going to withstand the most changes, being redesigned in many areas, and particularly in the sections of the Venturi channels and diffuser throat. With these premises understood, the sidepod could maintain a similar conformation to the W13 with vertical inlets at the front. On the other hand, the rear part of the car could be less worked on for two major reasons. The first reason is that of the aerodynamic nature of it, with a flat section at the level of the rear suspension which goes on to form a T-shape at the rear to increase the efficiency of the diffuser by exploiting the beam wing. The other reason is more of a structural nature, and in fact, the large open floor space at the bottom of the W13 was particularly flexible at the ends. To combat the phenomenon of porpoising, the thickness had been increased, with that further adding to the weight. Obviously, the weight is an issue that's going to cause problems for all teams out there, but Mercedes is a team that understands this better than anyone else, which is why the team will shed some weight from other aspects of the car. From the 2023 season onwards, the minimum weight has been reduced to 796 kilos, which means the teams will have bigger challenges to beat the overweight of their cars. The gearbox will also undergo some changes, as it will be a more profound evolution of the previous one, which eventually means that the critical components of the rear suspension will have a different arrangement. There is one thing that Mercedes is very happy to have accomplished, and that has put pressure on other teams as well, and that is firing up the engine. The technicians that are directed by Huell Thomas have already started this beauty, and they're now assured that the performance won't vary at all compared to Honda and Ferrari. Given the fact that there is an engine freeze set in place until the beginning of the 2026 season, we failed to see how Mercedes managed to equal the level in just 1 month. That's something they'll have to prove in the 2023 season. The engine's combustion has been greatly improved in collaboration with Petronas, and the team has also managed to improve consumption efficiency thanks to a new fuel formulation. What's also worth mentioning is the fact that if the sides remain minimal, as on the W13, they will maintain vertical openings and visible deformable structures. On the right, however, the double bottom version, which has a high chance of being adopted for the W14 format of the car, will be very similar to the concept that was used on the RB18. Now, slight changes have been made in the dimensions and support of the mirrors, as they're the ones that contribute a lot to the aerodynamical performance of the car. Mercedes will have an enormous challenge ahead of them, because competing against a two-time world champion and a team that enters 2023 with a brand new team principal is not as easy as it sounds. As of now, the ball is in Red Bull's hands, and they aren't willing to let go of it anytime soon. But still, the Austrian team is very cautious, and it seems that all of the changes that were made at Mercedes have done their job of scaring the world champions and making them more prepared for the next season. Helmut Marko has spoken about the silver arrows and what he expects will happen in the 2023 season, with him adding that Red Bull should be more afraid than Mercedes compared to Ferrari. While many take this as a cheap shot towards the Maranello team, the Austrian does hold a valid point, and when talking about this, he added, "I would say that we should fear Mercedes more, mainly because they have an advantage over Ferrari in terms of strategy and reliability." Furthermore, Marko discussed Red Bull entering an era of dominance similar to what happened to Mercedes from 2014 to 2021, but he doesn't believe this is possible because the situation is very different from what happened 8 years ago. "Our situation is certainly not like that of Mercedes at the beginning of the hybrid era. We don't have an immense lead with the engine right now, so that is very different. Mercedes had at least 50 base horsepower margin over all the others back then. And we shouldn't forget, 2022 has been the first year under these new set of regulations. Other teams have obviously seen what we've done with this year's car, so I think it will definitely be much closer next season." That's something that even George Russell believes. The young Brit was able to secure his first career win with Mercedes in Brazil last year, and when asked about what he thinks of the 2023 season, he said that so far, nothing is looking negative. Russell has high hopes of securing more wins than Mercedes and possibly being a championship contender, having finished 4th the previous season and being the only teammate to beat Hamilton in the same team. The future is bright for Mercedes, but the question of whether they can make it work for 2023 or not remains open. If they can't make some drastic changes, it's likely that they'll struggle like this until the beginning of the new regulations in 2026, and the momentum will switch towards Red Bull and Ferrari. That's something that would put Mercedes on the back foot for a couple of years, a scenario they aren't used to and wouldn't want to get used to right now when they have a great pair of drivers. So, what do you think will happen next with the Brackley-based team? Furthermore, what do you think about the W14? Let us know in the comments down below.